And we're back. We're back in Dubai, baby, as Bitcoin heads up about $50,000 for just a moment there. The airplane indicator apparently still undefeated, which is actually quite concerning. But anyways, more into the point, I think a lot of the questions, especially in the last 24 hours, as Bitcoin played at about a $2,000 downside move is that it? Is it $50,000 never again? Is it all over? Well, we're going to address that and then obviously revisit some of our models that have been governing this overall move. And other than that, I would like to welcome you back to the Krown Crypto channel. I should let you know that as we are getting settled in here to our new apartment, that my connectivity is going to be pretty limited. I'm actually using my phone to generate internet as of right now. It looks hilarious actually in front of me, and I'm not dressed properly as well, so there'll be no video. Not that you really need that, anyways. But let's get into it. As of right now, I need to reference my notes, and we're going to first start off with the daily statistics. So we're looking at the run-up statistics over here, which essentially measure the amount of consecutive days that we typically see on average when things trend green or red. So obviously we are more focused on the green side right here. And to give perspective, when Bitcoin does put in consecutive green days, the average is actually 3 in a row throughout the history of Bitcoin. And if you even add one more to that, at 4, you already get to the 84th percentile right here. For reference, the maximum that we've ever seen in a row ever has been 14 green days. And of the last week, we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 green days in a row before yesterday's ever so slightly red day. I mean, realistically, this day basically closed unchanged, but it is a red day nonetheless. And so this actually does have some like greater merit than just that. So just like when the bear market kicked off in 2022, we saw a slew of red days in a row, way outside of the average. I think this was like back on over here. It was like 7 or 8 red days in a row, somewhere right around here. That was a good signal of the market overall shifting from bullish to bearish. It was or at least it was no longer a bull market. Well, over here, we are getting the opposite but equal effect as Bitcoin does put in, 8 green days in a row. Now, of course, on this channel, we have been more or less looking for just general macro upside since essentially the beginning of 2023 or the very, very end of 2022. But this is just further confirmation that as Bitcoin does head up above $50,000, a pretty big round even number, one of those psychological numbers, it's getting stronger. It's getting stronger. The overall momentum is increasing rather than waning. So long term, I still do expect Bitcoin continues up and to the right. But in the short term, the real question is Bitcoin in for a correction here after, 8 days straight up, 8 days straight up in a pretty impressive move nonetheless. I mean, this was nearly a 20% move, right? So this was an outlier and rather extreme. So I do want to address now the question of, is Bitcoin getting ready for a correction? Well, the only way that I really actually govern that or judge that right now is by looking at our daily RSI and saying that, hey, look, at some point we will have bearish divergence on the daily RSI between this high right here on basically a couple days ago on the 12th and all these highs that we saw in basically October, November, even December over here. But that is not actionable in any way, shape, or form, at least in the way that I look at things, especially as long as Bitcoin is trading above yesterday's low. That is to say that you cannot compare local high to local high until you have a local fucking high. And in this case, yesterday's low is a very obvious inflection point that if Bitcoin does come under and especially close the daily under, okay, now you have a comparable high and now you have a likely greater pullback in motion with, areas of interest probably down to 46,000-ish, let's say, and maybe even lower than that. But until that happens, upside is obviously the more likely thing to be happening, and there's no divergence even to be possible as long as that is happening. So if we go ahead and reference, not this chart, but this chart over here, we can see, and again, I actually posted this on Twitter. I've actually been a lot more active there as of recent, but in this case, we can see that the 61.8 range low and the 78.6 range high have been acting as kind of a buffer zones for current price action for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe working on 5 days right here. So perhaps an earlier indication of Bitcoin putting in a local top would be a daily closure below the 61.8 level, which is $49,000 on the index. If you see that, then yes, Bitcoin's very likely at least going to come down to, 47.5-ish region. And personally speaking, I do think that things would come more or less wherever the median is at that time, which as of right now is 45 or below $45,000. Obviously, that's going to move up with each and every passing day, so it completely depends upon when that would happen. But again, as long as Bitcoin's even above $49,000, there's just it's continuation and a consolidation at a very high level. And yes, it is extreme, but we do kind of expect extreme things during extreme moves, I suppose. So fair enough. Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to get into this model over here, the volatility versus stochastic momentum model, that was essentially validating upside as of last week's move above $46,000. That was the big pivot on this channel that's saying, hey, as long as Bitcoin's below $46,000, there are potential for much more severe corrections into the deeper 30s. But as Bitcoin did reclaim $46,000, well, in this case, we can apply this model to the upside, as we spoke about last week. So whenever we've seen this signature with extreme lows on volatility represented by the BBWP indicator over here, expanding from extreme lows, we've seen an average move of about 40% over the next little over a month. And the direction of the stochastic oscillator has been a very high correlation to the direction of where that volatility expansion comes in around. And right now, the 5-day oscillator is still positioned to the upside, and it is closing today. And assuming that it closed above 44,450, which I think is I personally think is rather likely. We're going to see this one, very likely continue on overall. This is a 5-day chart, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to continue today, but in the next, 5 to 10 day spread, yeah, most likely we do see continuation of this rally, which again, is pretty nice. As far as areas of interest to the upside, again, the average move from this is about 40%. So taking that from the low, that would be about $55,000. Oops, there's my damn phone. And there is a standard deviation on that average of about 7. So, maybe on the lower end, about 35%, which would, for reference, put Bitcoin at $52,000. On the upper end, if things get really, really crazy, then that would put Bitcoin, I guess, basically around $57,000, $58,000. Again, this setup essentially fired off, or at least the low that we measure from in terms of timing fired off a few weeks ago. So we're already almost 20 days into this one. So if we're going out 35 days, which is the average, that would still kind of plot us in for the end of February here. So somewhere around there is where we would be looking for the final destination to likely occur. And I suspect that's probably also in alignment with one of our major numbers on the HPDR indicators over here, which, yes, indeed, we see the 88.4 range high coming in at 55, basically. So, and the 78.6 coming in just below 52. So both of those numbers were of interest from that model. I also want to address this as well, the 5-day time frame. Right here is very interesting to me, just because Bitcoin is going to have a chance to have continuous closures above the median on the HPDR bands. Again, anywhere in the top end of this blue zone is fair game after that. I don't necessarily say it has to get exactly to the top side, but very, very likely at least like $54,000 at that point. And yeah, potentially even all the way up to basically 60 or just below 60. For reference, the median is at 49,150. So it's got, some more. It's currently it is above with 16 hours left to go in the day. But also of interest here is that the 5-day HPDRO representing directional volatility is about to turn up. And anytime that we have seen that kind of cross a zero read, well, that is when typically major rallies or major dumps occur, like this one right here, when it crosses zero read, preceding the pump from October to, kind of where we're at right now, actually. There's several more instances, but again, I don't even have like a proper mouse right now, so it's actually really fucking difficult to get around on this computer. But this is all coming within the context of extreme lows on volatility. So, crazy things can get more crazy here. If things are going to get more crazy, we do expect Bitcoin to close above 49,150 today, or anything here or higher would look very, very good for continuation into the end of the month. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for today's video. A little bit on the shorter side. Like I said, throughout the next few days, things are going to be a little bit shaky on my end. I'll do my best. But just understand, it's going to be limited connectivity, unfortunately. So I'll end things right there. As always, I want to wish you the best of the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.